Recently, we built this beaded panel door. While we were building it, I talked about I would like to show you the kind of finish that I prefer for a beaded panel door. And so today that's what we're going to do. Now this is what the door is going to end up looking like at the very end, but I'm going to go through and show you all the processes that we used in order to make the door look like this. And there's a secret that always makes it come out right. So pay attention, we're going to tell you about it. The first thing we have to do is spray on a coat of sanding sealer. In my new location, I don't have access to a paint shop anymore, so we have been hunting around for a way to do our spray finishes. And online or on Amazon, I found this Polindi airless sprayer. I purchased it because I read the reviews, and the reviews said it was a pretty good sprayer, and I've used it and I can see why it has good reviews. I really kind of like that. This is a nice little thing, very quiet, very thorough, and it sprays on a nice finish. You'll see as we go through, but I just want you to introduce you to that new equipment that I bought, new tool that I bought. Like I say, the first thing we're going to do is spray on a coat of sanding sealer. Then we're going to be putting a glaze on it. If we were going to do a stain and glaze finish, we would stain and still seal coat in between. If we were going to paint and glaze, we would put on our paint finish, still put a seal coat in between, and then put on our glaze. But anyway, let's go spray our seal coat and get ready to glaze. Our sanding sealer is all dry, so we're getting ready to sand it. We're going to make sure that we sand our sanding sealer all the way around, and you want to sand with the grain. So on this edge right here, I would sand the route, then I would sand with the grain here, and then I would come back here and sand the length of this, taking out any cross marks. Now, you don't have a lot of cross marks of any real heavy duty when you do sanding sealer. It just makes the glaze more consistent, and that is what we're going to be doing here. Is that glaze is the next. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish sanding out my sanding sealer. I picked up a little sponge here. This is one that I've never used before, but it's kind of soft, and I wanted to be able to get down here in my profiles and get those profiles sanded. And that seems to be working okay. I don't know, a little hard to, I don't know if I'm a fan of that one or not. I think I might go back to my other one. Okay, never mind. Anyway, we sand our panel, we sand our grooves, we sand our routes. We get everything all sanded nice and smooth, and you can tell whether you've done a good job sanding almost more by feel than by anything else. And then when you get it all sanded, you take your air, blow it off, or a brush and brush it off so that it's all nice and clean, and you get all of the sanding dust off, and then we'll be ready to glaze. Okay, with our door all sanded, we're getting ready to put on our glaze. We're using Pro Coat Unicoat glaze, and it's just black. We're just using straight black. We'll be applying it with just a chip brush and wiping it off with a paper towel. I always start with the edges and work my way around like that. You don't glaze the back of the door. The door was sealed on the back and sanded so that it's all ready to go, but I don't glaze the back of the door. That's just my personal preference, and you don't need to if you're just doing a glaze finish, because the back of your door doesn't show. And then I go through and I wipe my glaze off, and I like to wipe it as clean as I possibly can without taking it completely out of the profile. So I always just make sure it's wiped nice and clean like that, but it leaves the profile highlighted. Okay. This is an oil-based glaze, so it doesn't dry real fast, which is nice. Gives you time to work your finish, to clean it properly as you go along. And like I say, I do my edges first, get those all done. And I always just work my glaze down into my profiles so that it gets that completely coated. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the outside done, and then we'll come back, and the next thing I do after I do the outside edge, then I do the panel. I don't do the face of my stile and rail yet. That's my last place that I do. That gives me something to hang on to while I'm doing the rest of it. So let me go ahead and get the outside done, and then we'll come back and do the panel. I'm getting ready now to do the panel. I wanted to show you something. I always put a box underneath my door when I do this so that it raises it up off of the surface that I'm working. It just allows me to get around the edges a little better. That's just a little trick that I've learned that works really well for me. Something you might want to keep in mind as you're getting ready to glaze your doors. You want to make sure that you get your glaze into all of your profiles really good. Make sure you work it down into those profiles because that's what we're trying to highlight. And so you want to make sure you've got enough glaze to make sure that there's no missing spots when you're doing your glazing. And like I say, don't be in a hurry. Do a little bit at a time. Work your way around. I use paper towels to wipe my glaze because it's nice and clean, and I don't have to worry about the disposal part of it because paper towels are easy to get rid of. Okay, you can see how we're going through. We're highlighting the profiles, we're highlighting our beads. We're going to go ahead and finish out the panel. We'll do the same thing just like we're doing. We'll just work our way through. Now your glaze, besides highlighting your profiles, your glaze also adds a little color to your door. If you were staining this door before you glazed it. Now, whenever you glaze, you have to seal, but whatever you're doing. So that's why we sprayed a sealer coat. Glaze is not a product to be applied directly to stain or directly to a raw door. Glaze has to kind of sit on top of a seal coat finish. So whatever you do, stain, then you have to seal. If you're doing it just a natural color like I'm doing it, you still have to seal it before you put on your glaze because your glaze is not a product to be applied directly to stain or directly to raw wood. It has to go on top of a seal coat in order to be able to be cleaned up properly and to give it the right look. Anyway, the glaze gives it a little bit of color all its own. So if you're staining and you wanted it to be the same color as your stain, you've got to take into account that your glaze adds a little bit of color. And of course, there are many different colors of glaze, just as there are many different colors of stain, many different kinds of wood. And those choices all add to how you end up with a different looking look on every product or every project that you do, even though the process of paint and glaze or stain and glaze might be the same. You can make it look different every project by just how you work your finish. Okay. All right, we'll go back here, clean that. Make sure we don't have any globs of glaze. You can see how this has allowed me to be able to hang on to the door by leaving the face of my stiles and rails till the very last. Gave me something to hang on to while I was doing my glaze. All right, now we'll go back and we'll do our glaze. And I always work with the grain, just like I talked about on our sanding. I work with the grain. You don't need a lot of glaze on this flat part because there's no profiles to highlight. So you can just put it on there and work it back and forth. But you do have to do it in order to make sure that the color that the glaze adds to your flat surfaces is consistent all the way around. Even though the wood is not consistent in color, no piece of wood is consistent all the way through. Same board will have 100 different colors in it. But you do want to make sure that the color that you've added with your glaze is consistent. Okay. All right. I love a glaze finish because I love the way it highlights the profiles, and a beaded door like this just really brings out that beaded look to have those profiles highlighted with glaze. All right. Okay. We'll let the glaze dry the recommended time and put on a coat of top coat. With our glaze dry, we're now going to spray the top coat on our door. Well, here we are with our door all finished and the nice finish that our new spray gun puts on it. We're very excited to have that as an addition to our shop. Makes for a nice finish coat on all of the work that we like to do and the work that we like to show you how to do here on Woodworking with Wes.